Well, I think George Will described this country brilliantly when he said that Americans are temperamentally conservative but operationally liberal. And of course, that shows the dichotomy. My colleague Brian Flanagan said something about Michael Kammen's book earlier, you know, the paradoxes of American history, and that's certainly one of them, a paradox that exists within us. But paradoxes, of course, are often resolvable. I would point out that in the 1990s, you'll have to realize that this is coming now from my experience working in gubernatorial administration with a governor who was head of the NGA and the RGA during that period of time. All the signs were, there were more than 30 Republican governors, fiscal conservatives, at the very least, many of them edged into social conservatism. You think of Frank Keating, for example, in Oklahoma, and folks like that. Others were a little bit more liberal, Tom Ridge in Pennsylvania. But I got the impression in the 1990s, working from inside a gubernatorial administration, that Americans were precisely what George Will described us as. You know, temperamentally conservative, operationally liberal. And it was hard for that coalition to stay together once the communist menace yanked out the anti-communists, because they were such a strong pillar in the original conservative coalition that we saw emerge in the 1950s. And once that was taken out, I mean, we weren't at the end of history, we were at the end of conservatism as we knew it.
May I ask?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm very curious about the role that Kennedy plays on the court now. He's clearly taken over the counter position at this point. But if we see the move of the retirement of one or two of the more conservative justices, or maybe Stevens, and Obama has the chance to appoint two or three, do you see Kennedy becoming, he seems to be more of a swing vote to the middle or to the left on occasion. Do you see him becoming just the reverse if the court swings a little bit more liberal? Do you see him then becoming the swing vote to the right?
Well, and it's a great question. I mean, I think Kennedy's role, and right, O'Connor played this previously, is because he's in the middle of the other 9 justices, he's the swing justice, right? Because there's 4 to his left and 4 to his right. If that balance shifts, then nobody cares about Kennedy anymore, right? I mean, he's just one vote amongst 9, but it's not going to shift anytime soon, right? I mean, we never know what's going to happen, but it seems likely that the next 3 vacancies on the Supreme Court are going to come from the liberal wing of the court, with Stevens coming first. He's 88 years old. It seems pretty likely that he's going to retire pretty soon, and there's lots of rumors about Souter and Ginsburg being ready to retire as well. So had John McCain been elected, we would have seen a battle of the century over the confirmation, but we would have seen the court shift significantly rightward. But with Obama's election, what we're going to see in the short term is the status quo, right? So Obama will have the chance to replace Stevens or Souter or Ginsburg, or perhaps all 3 of them, with liberal justices, which means Kennedy stays in the middle with 4 justices to his left, 4 to his right. Again, this is somewhat of an oversimplification. There are particular issues where the justices do not, right? I myself have argued in print that there are lots of contexts and situations in which the justices' votes cannot be understood in straightforwardly political terms, but there are situations in which it's a pretty good measure. The kinds of issues on which the court draws the most public attention, right, the polarizing, divisive culture war issues, Kennedy has repeatedly, not every time, but repeatedly joined the liberals, right? So he's done it on abortion, he's done it on gay rights and the like, he's done it on affirmative action, sort of. So those have gotten some attention, but there are a lot, and he's done it on the presidential power questions, but there are lots of other issues on which Kennedy has regularly voted with his conservative colleagues, and that's sort of the precise definition of the swing justice, both that he's in the middle and that sometimes he goes one way and sometimes he goes the other way. So in Obama's first term, I think what we're likely to see is the status quo. Obama will replace some of those liberals with other liberals, and the breakdown is more or less the same. To the extent that Obama and the expanded Democratic majorities in Congress push those 2 branches of government to the left, you may well see that the Roberts Court starts to look more conservative in comparison. I think if history is any guide, when you have a shift in partisan control of the executive and legislative branches on the scale that we've seen this year, that often produces subsequent conflicts with the Supreme Court, right? Because given the rules for appointing the justices, right, where they're appointed for life and you only get to replace one at a time, right, the turnover on the court lags the other branches. So it is often the case that after a partisan realignment, if that's what we're sort of in the middle of, right, the court continues to represent the old order. This is painting Kennedy as a conservative, right, which he is in many ways, in which case it would not be unreasonable to predict some significant conflicts between the Obama administration and the court. If Obama gets a second term, by the end of Obama's second term, both Kennedy and Scalia would be 80 years old. So as far as I know, they're both in good health. I mean, they might well stay on the court as long as Justice Stevens has. But if he serves 2 terms, if he's succeeded by some other Democratic president, right, that starts to get highly speculative, then you would see the court moving in more significantly in a new direction. For now, they've got 4 solid conservative votes and 1 sometime conservative vote, and all 5 of those guys are likely to stay on the court for a while.
Well, thank you very much, Tom, and all of my colleagues. I appreciate so much your participating in this conference, and I want to thank you, the audience, for coming with great questions and alert minds, even through the afternoon when you're digesting your lunch. You brought your great questions and helped make this Hauenstein Center George Mason Conference a success. Thank you so much, and as MacArthur said about the Philippines, we shall return. Thank you.